Welcome, Mistakes listeners. This is Dave speaking on behalf of Todd once again, and I'm excited to present our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th episode of Parenting Mistakes. I'm very glad to have made it this far. This episode, we actually focused in on My Little Pony's Friendship and Magic, or Friendship is Magic. My Little Pony's Friendship is Magic. This episode was recorded on 7/27/2015 or July 27, 2015. Man, sit back and enjoy the show. And we're back.
Yes, we are.
So, I got a question for you. This refers to our conversation last time where we talked about earthquake preparedness.
Yes.
Did you read any of that New York Times article that talked about the quote-unquote big one that's supposed to hit Portland and Seattle?
No, but hasn't there been a rumored big one that's coming for many, many years?
Yeah, so this one is interesting in that they expect not just that we're due for one, we're due for an earthquake, but they're expecting a 9.0 plus event to occur within the next, say, 50 years. It's almost a guarantee that it's going to occur. And the other issue that comes along with it is that we need to prepare for a tsunami if we actually live on the shore. They're basically saying everything that is on the never eat sour wheat west side of I-5 is going to be underneath water.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're basically saying the ground is going to drop about 6 feet. And basically that is going to cause a gigantic wave or a tidal wave or a tsunami that will come and basically pretty much, I mean, the way I've seen NOAA's website, so I went to NOAA's website, they have like a calculator that calculates as to where the water might go. So I'm assuming that you're prepared. Like, do you have like supplies for an earthquake?
You mean like a boat?
Well, I think I'm going to have to get a boat. Seriously. Not that I'm going to be building an ark in the backyard or anything like that, but pretty much what I figure. Well, you've seen all that tsunami footage where all the junk and there's cars and there's, all sorts of things coming down the street and then it hits your house with a semi-truck in the movies, right? It's a submarine, right, or something like that. I think we can actually survive that. Like, we'll just sit in our house, but I think what I'm going to have to do is get an inflatable raft and, like, wait 2 days, right, and then just leave our house by raft.
So what you're saying is all this analysis we're doing of kids shows is irrelevant because we're all going to fall into the sea anyway. On the West Coast.
No, you're not going to fall in the sea. I'm going to fall in the sea. You can carry the show on without me, right?
Oh, okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or I can. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad you're concerned about the show. That's good.
Yeah. Well, that's really the main concern. Your house is going to float away. We got to make sure that the podcast keeps going.
As long as the second story of the house is here and I've got some sort of internet connection.
That's right. Then we're good.
We're all good.
Yeah.
So you don't have a raft. You actually have supplies?
Oh, sure. Yeah. We have several tubs of dry goods, bottled water, standard stuff.
Okay.
Not a ton.
Okay.
Not weeks and months worth.
Yeah.
But enough to survive a few days.
Okay. Well, they suggest that we should be prepared for a 2-week stint, but in this article it basically just suggests that our home would be unlivable, like it would be the end of our neighborhood. You just don't come back.
Well, that's something exciting to look forward to.
Yeah, no, and that's why I bring it up, because it's kind of like the forefront of my brain at this point, is that, I need to get ready, and I'm actually, again, going to the elder parent to seek out advice, and once again, I'm not getting the information.
You're just hopping on that train again, aren't you?
I was seeking. You've been here. You've been doing this so much longer. You've been thinking about how you can get your kids out of the house, right?
Well, yeah, but it's not like I've survived multiple 9.0 earthquakes in my parenting time.
Yeah. I've actually done a lot of working out and a lot of lifts and pull-ups and this, that, and everything. So I can guarantee that I can get my wife out, and I can get my 2 kids. A boat. Yeah, and I can row a boat, survive an earthquake, hold the house together, like Samson, but the reverse, right? You don't push out, you push in.
Gotcha.
Right.
Well, that's an excellent segue to ponies.
Is it a good segue to ponies?
No, not at all, but that's okay.
It's one of my better dovetails, right?
No comment.
Yeah, so. Again, I got nothing from you. Nothing. I'm telling you about the end of the world. It's the apocalypse, and what I get is, I got a few bottles in the garage. I think we got water. You realize that your state is dependent upon our state. If our state goes down, you are in big trouble.
Actually, I think we get some of our water from like Colorado.
Yes. Well,
Northern California.
William Shatner was petitioning to get water from us, right? Like he was up there saying we should get water from Washington because we get all this rain. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to keep you on task here. We've got ponies to discuss.
So, you watched this episode, I'm assuming. Let's do another disclaimer.
Okay, which disclaimer? We have several.
This is the one disclaimer. This is the, hey, we don't know anything.
Yes.
Hey, we're just two parents looking at TV shows individually. We're not looking at the entire series. I don't even think we could do this by looking at the entire series, right? Like,
no.
Like, we would basically have, let's say if we're watching 5 seasons of Ponies, we would have something like, 100 episodes that we'd have to go through to get a clear view of what Ponies is all about. So we pick randomly, right? We just roll the dice, or what's available. That's better said. What's available.
Well, sometimes I just pick on the title of the episode.
Okay. Oh, say what if it fancies you?
Yes,
okay.
A little bit.
All right, that's good.
Yes, because again, we do talk a little bit about whether we like it. We talk a little bit about, you probably talk more about the art, the animation, and that sort of thing when you do animation. I don't care as much about that stuff. That's more your area. But we're looking at appropriateness, and we're trying to replicate what parents have to deal with.
Yes.
Because oftentimes you have a child that says, hey, I want to watch this show, and the first show you watch, you'll probably make some sort of decision on. So we're doing kind of the same thing. Yeah,
it's actually, and what I like about it is the reason I started doing this was because I actually wanted to start watching a lot of these shows because I wasn't exactly sure what my kids were watching. And so, hey, why not watch all these shows and then bring along another parent and we can kind of get a good idea of what the show's about. And I would say so far, every show we've watched, I think we've hit every theme.
Probably.
Like, I think, no matter what, I think we've got the tone, right? Like, this is the tone of the show. This is what the tone will always be for every episode.
Yeah. One has to assume that every episode of these types of shows is going to have a fair representation of what the show is generally about.
Yep.
Generally.
So there is our public service announcement.
There you go.
You've got some details that I see here.
I got some details. So we did My Little Pony, which is
No. My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic.
Oh, sorry. That is the full title.
Well, there's a difference. Because My Little Pony was from the 80s. This is My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic.
Okay. My bad. There you go.
Well, there's a big difference, and let me tell you, this episode or this show is highly watched by parents along with kids. So
yes, so we did season 4, episode 14, Philly Vanilli.
Correct.
Which you really, again, we know that even kids shows that are targeted to kids are written with adult viewers in mind. A kid is not going to know the reference. This episode was about lip syncing, which parents will remember the ultra popular group Milli Vanilli, which was busted for lip syncing.
Correct.
So,
yeah, that's the joke.
That's the joke.
That's joke number 1.
I do explain it.
What do you say? So human or humor?
Humor.
Right, humor.
All right, so this was originally a toy line. A lot of times
it still is.
It still is. A lot of times there's different relationships with various franchises. Sometimes it's a show first and then a toy line. Sometimes it's a toy line and then a show.
Yep.
Sort of depends on the era, that sort of thing. So this was originally toy line. This particular show, My Little Pony.
Friendship is magic. Friendship is magic.
Started on the Hub. It's now on the Discovery Network, I believe. Mm-hmm. 5th season.
Yep.
Okay, so the central premise is it is ponies that live on the island of Equestria.
Mm-hmm.
The central character is Twilight Sparkle, who is sent to Ponyville to study the magic of friendship.
That is the entire plot line.
That's the entire plot line. There's 5 of their main sort of good horses. There's a 6-pack.
Yep.
And there is an antagonist, which we did not see in this particular episode. Correct, right? They did Nightmare Moon.
So admittedly, I'm a little bit of a brony, so I do understand this show quite a bit. Nightmare doesn't actually show up quite a bit. She's kind of when she shows up, it's a big event.
Right.
It's like an event episode. So we're not going to see too much of her. Really, the antagonist for the ponies is overcoming the challenges that are presented to them.
They are their own antagonist.
Correct. Yes.
Right. Okay. So, as you might expect, this show, one would assume, is sort of targeted to younger girls, but, at least according to Wikipedia, the source of all knowledge,
mm-hmm.
It has a following of young and middle-aged men, dubbed bronies. Yes, which we could get into a whole discussion of that as a subculture. We're probably not going to get off onto that tangent. But needless to say...
It's not why we're here, but...
Correct. Needless to say, and we kind of know this, that networks and producers and writers, people that produce these types of shows, are going to study their audience. So even if they target it towards an audience and they realize, there's a bunch of people from a different demographic watching this,
mm-hmm.
chances are they're going to adapt content to at least include that.
Yep. And because we might touch on a little of that at the end of the episode for sure.
This is still a business.
Yep.
We can want to believe that kids programming is all about just entertaining the kids and spreading joy throughout the world, but it's a business.
Well, and let's be really clear, when they advertise off of ponies, we're still not seeing car ads. We're still seeing Bubble Magic or
right. We're seeing
Jiggly Jiggly or it's if it was clearly branded for 18 to 35 again, we would see a lot more car ads or hey, come and get a bud or whatever, right? So
right. So give me your thoughts.
So I love ponies. I have watched ponies with Kayleen for years. What's not to like? It's bright. It's an up. It's never really a down. They do deal with some dour problems, but just watching the show makes you happy. It's not like, again, when we watched a couple of Disney shows where that initial effect I have is, wow, I'm feeling really good or comfortable. That stays with you when you watch the entire episode of Ponies. To be honest with you, there isn't a character on that show that just really gets... They understand that they don't have a particular character because it's horribly annoying. In fact, I find all of the ponies very interesting to watch, and their interplay is great. They've got a good chemistry together. It's a finely... I mean, one of the biggest positives is it's a finely honed show with a lot of thought, and I would say a very good A to Z story, and unlike other shows, they really do try to draw on an application. Like, at the very end of the show, there is an application sequence where they basically say, what did I learn today? And I kid you not, up until Ponies, I hadn't actually seen a show or a kid's show that kind of said, let's do the wrap-up. Hey, these are all the things I went through. Usually when they're trying to be educational, you're like, well, you know, the education happens on the spot. Or 2 + 2 = 4, it happens right there. That's the application. But they never come back to that again. Like, you might get a little bit of that on Sesame Street, right? They kind of do a little review at the end, like today's sponsors, but this actually says this is what we learned, and this is how I grew from it. And I love that about ponies.
Yeah, it is definitely a positive show. It's generally affirming. We've talked about a number of shows that we have seen, and admittedly shows that are maybe targeted more towards teens and that sort of thing. There's always sort of a sarcastic tone. The characters sort of chew on each other a little bit. They make fun of each other. And there's a general lack of that. It's pretty encouraging, it's happy, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's an understanding of every limitation within the group. Just by watching this episode, you can see that, obviously Shutterfly has got shyness issues, and all the ponies kind of try to wrap around that in some capacity, like encouraging her to move forward, or just encouraging her to stay put, Yeah.
Well, and I did like, just to give a quick summary of the plot of this episode.
Which we need to do that sooner than later.
I know.
I always forget that part. I'm like,
okay.
What are they talking about, right?
I know, but it's less about the actual shows. Summary of the plot is that one of the ponies has stage fright.
Shutterfly.
Shutterfly. Okay, I didn't pay attention to the names, so
okay. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. You fill in the details.
That's all right.
Shutterfly has stage fright, but has a wonderful singing voice. She is enamored with this singing group. One of the singers comes down with laryngitis.
Big Mac comes down with laryngitis. Okay, Rarity, who is leading the group, asks Fluttershy to be a part of the group. Which, prior to this, we didn't know that Shutterfly had a beautiful singing voice.
Right. So they ask...
But it's discovered now because Shutterfly's been hiding it because she's shy, and now Rarity is like all enamored. We need you in this particular group.
So Shutterfly does not want to do this because it would require being on stage.
Correct.
So they go to the local, medicine horse.
Right. No, she's a voodoo witch doctor.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
So who gives her this, because the horse that has laryngitis, what's the name again?
Big Shutterfly. Mac. Oh, Big Mac. Big Mac has got laryngitis.
Big Mac is a bass.
Yeah.
Okay. Sings low.
Yes.
So
his catchphrase is yup. He says it all the time.
So the voodoo horse gives Shutterfly some sort of herb that makes her voice drop way down.
Correct.
So they come up with this solution that Big Mac is going to stay on stage, lip sync, while Shutterfly is off stage and doing the actual singing.
Yep.
So you know where this episode is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
You know that at some point the curtain is going to get dropped. Shutterfly is going to get discovered.
It's the exact same plot from Singing in the Rain.
Is it?
It is.
I don't remember the plot.
Yeah, Singing in the Rain actually has a plot. It does.
Yes, I remember there being a lot of singing and dancing, but I don't remember the plot. I imagine this type of plot has been done numerous occasions.
Correct. And it happened to Milli Vanilli. It actually did.
So,
go ahead.
One of the things that I did like is that when this is discovered, the Shutterfly is still affirmed in her fear and is encouraged, and she does start to come out of this a little bit, but the thing that I do like is that they don't just sort of wrap it up in 20 minutes and say, oh, well, I did this once, so therefore all my fears are overcome.
Mm-hmm.
It's all fixed, which I thought was a pretty good realistic appraisal. That she even uses the phrase baby steps.
Yep.
Which I think is fair, because that's always the dilemma. That's the dilemma when you have these sort of moral lessons in cartoons. Do you want it to be realistic in saying, hey, if you've got challenges, kids, you can overcome them, but it may take some time, versus you feeling like, oh, well, we're just going to let you, stick with your weakness, We're never going to challenge you, that sort of thing.
Yep.
So that's the hard balance. So I do like that part. Problems, concerns, things you don't like?
I didn't find the show particularly entertaining. I felt
it's not for you.
Correct, but I don't see. So I think part of so this is always a weird balance, but you do want your kids to watch the show and be entertained.
Yeah.
And I think that Ponies has arrived at a very weird time in its livelihood. It's first of all, we usually see cartoon series ends around season 3. This has gone into the 5th season, so we're looking at a 4th season episode. And obviously they have 2 different audiences that they're pandering to. I sat down with Kayleen, and at some point during the show, Kayleen just kind of tuned out.
Okay.
She wasn't very interested anymore.
Okay.
Part of that is that if you watch enough Ponies, this is a plot line that they've actually done several times. In fact, the previous episode they pull this low voice that Shutterfly has. It's all convoluted, but they're pulling from a season 2 episode in which her voice got low, and it was really funny. The first time that happened, it was hilarious.
Okay.
There's a couple of disconnects for me. The humor was lost on me because it really just looked like Big Mac was singing every time Shutterfly was singing. So Shutterfly is singing behind the curtain, and the impact of the other episode is that when Shutterfly was talking, it was horrible and embarrassing for her, and all the ponies would react to it. This just felt like they're just dubbing a voice over Shutterfly. It just the whole episode lost a lot of its impact. You kind of knew where it was going, and Kayleen kind of tuned out. Like, I'm not too interested in this anymore. Yes, they tried to throw some Pinkie Pie in there, like Pinkie Pie, the pink horse, right? And she's coming at Shutterfly, and she's kind of being her over-exaggerated self. But as far as the Ponies episode is concerned, I hate to say it, but kind of boring. And it was even boring for my 6-year-old, their target demographic. So,
and that's hard for me to evaluate because
she sat with me, right? So I'm just telling you, as a parent, she sat with me and watched this episode, and she was like, whatever, right? It's Ponies, I like it, but I'm not totally tuned in.
Okay.
So it's unfortunate that occurred because I do love Ponies, but I was like, okay. At what point is this going to be over? Again, it's a great show. I would totally recommend it. It's fire and forget viewing. The problem is that at this point in its life, your kids might be coming back to you after 5 minutes while you're trying to say, I think you should watch an episode of Ponies. The risk there might be they come back in 5 minutes while you're trying to do dishes, right? Not too interested in this. And part of that could be, and part of it could be that the fact that they're the split audience, right? Like, who are they trying to pander to? I mean, there are lots of gags that you and I got in that show. We're like, ha, that's funny, I get it. But they just kind of go over kids' heads.
Yes. Well, they're always going to.
Yeah. So that kind of is my caveat to saying, I wish they've done better, and I think they could do better. And I think that the show demonstrated how Ponies has kind of lost its footing a little bit.
I guess for me, when I watched this, I don't know if I would feel differently if I had kids that were younger right now or if I watched more episodes. It's just kind of a vanilla show. It's mushy.
Yep.
It's not there's not a lot of great depth to it. My one concern with it is that the whole premise of the plot, and you do run into this sometimes with other shows, is that the whole premise of the plot is one of the characters deceiving everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
that is sort of glossed over. Like, nobody comes back to them. You could see the plot going a variety of different directions. Right? Because in other situations, in other movies, once the character that is doing the deceiving is discovered, there is a sense of betrayal. There's a sense of, hey, you let us on. There's a sense of, why didn't you just be genuine with us? All of that is kind of glossed over in this. So there is sort of a message of lying is okay as long as it's, done by the good guys and it's well-intentioned. because even after they're discovered, it's just sort of like, oh, well, gee, you have such a nice voice. You should have just, told us. But
right.
there isn't really any frustration, and that's nice and all. I mean, it's great when people don't get frustrated with you. But if a kid did this, if an adult does this, and people discover it, then, I mean, the ironic thing is that the joke of the title is based on a music group that was basically shamed
mm-hmm.
and completely ousted from the music community.
Mm-hmm.
The people that were involved in that never came back. They never recovered. No one was ever on their side.
Right. However, I will say this to counterpoint that, to say that everybody understands who Shutterfly is and they understand her personality, and it's a unique cartoon that it is highly serialized. You can't just watch one episode; they're all interconnected in some way. So if Shutterfly was confronted, like the entire community understands who Shutterfly is and how shy she is, she would be absolutely crushed if she was confronted and put down.
Sure, but as a single show watcher, I'm not going to know that.
I understand that, and I was going to say, your analysis is completely fair. I call it the Curious George factor, which is George gets into all these crazy events, and at the end of the day, he never gets a spanking, right? He does horrible things to the man with the yellow hat, but there's also and what I'm saying is that there's also an understanding that this is what Curious George is.
Right.
And what I'm saying is that this is what Ponies is as well. Not trying to defend it. Curious, and actually, going back to Curious George, I can't recommend Curious George because he always gets away with it. Right. Every single time. And the man with the yellow hat's always patting him on the back. Hey, it's all good. That doesn't actually happen all the time on Ponies. So, just saying, I agree with you. Yes, I wish there had been some consequences for what occurred, but had that occurred, that character, as far as that show is concerned, would never sing again. It'd be the end.
Right. And I'm not, saying that they should have lambasted or ostracized or ridiculed the character, but the basic premise is that the character is deceiving.
Yep.
And that is just kind of glossed over. It's sort of like, oh, well, that's them. That's okay.
Yeah.
And it's almost sort of a victim thing because they're like, oh, well, you have stage fright, so therefore you can lie to us. And I don't know if that's necessarily the message that a kid would get, but there is that theme sometimes. Sometimes the theme for kids shows and adult shows too is that good guys can break the rules because they're the good guys.
Right.
And they have good intentions, so therefore they can bend, the principles a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, mistake of the week for this, or mistake of the episode?
Yeah, I think the mistake would be. I wish I could say that this was a stronger episode. We only watched one, but there's the potential that your kid might come back to you after 2 minutes and say, "Hey, can I watch something else?" Could happen.
Okay. I don't have a ton of closing thoughts on it. It's fine. Yeah. I wasn't blown away. I didn't say, oh, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's also, again, pretty clean, pretty straightforward, very positive.
Good song.
Maybe a trifle over positive, a little bit unrealistic, but that's okay. It's okay to aspire to a more positive world sometimes, even if that's not always going to happen.
Yeah, well, there you go. All right, well, you can follow us on Twitter at Parent Mistakes.
Parent Mistakes.
I think
follow us, send us comments. Yeah.
All right.
All right.